They're interviewing Caroline. I'm going to send you. You ladies don't mind if I do. You ladies mind if I share your LinkedIn URL with the
Not at all.
folks? Yeah. So I'm going to give those. I'm going to send those to you, Caroline, in the back channel, and you will post them, please, so that folks can reach out to Vanessa, Holly, Tia, and Sophia.
Hey, that's going to out.
Oh, we're live. 32 seconds. Great. Hey, well, welcome everyone, and Cyversity Land that is attending our conversation, our Cyversity Impact Interview Series interview today. Today we're focused on DEI. We've got some really great hosts, really great panelists today with us. Can you go to the next slide, Caroline, please? So our panelists today are going to be four folks that are subject matter experts in their own specific field. First, we have Tia Hopkins, who's the Chief Resiliency Officer and the Field CTO for eCentire. We have Vanessa Vining. She's the CEO of Cultural Effect. It's a consulting organization that works with organizations around ESG and DEI concerns and issues. Then we have Sophia Doja. She is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Rapid7, one of Cyversity's original partners. And of course, we have Holly Mendelson. Holly is the co-owner and also the publisher for Potomac Publishing. And in fact, she publishes a very widely known, long-running periodical called Insights of Diversity. So from these young ladies today, we're going to hear a lot about their own individual perspectives around DEI, and so we're happy to have them. Next screen. But just in the background, I just wanted to give a little background about Cyversity. Cyversity is a national 501c3 with a mission to consistently represent women, traditionally underserved communities, and veterans, all of which are trying to find access into cybersecurity. It's really not an easy thing to do, so there's a lot of need for advocacy, agency, and of course, support in this industry. We do this because we know that the advocates of the threat landscape, they're very diverse. And so we're trying to create the same diversity on our side on the ethical side, if you will, on the ethical side of the engagement or of the community. Next slide, please. So this organization, Cyversity, is a membership organization. Individuals such as Tia, who happens to be one of the board members for Cyversity, Sophia, who happens to be a member with Rapid7, they invest $100 in themselves to learn more about what Cyversity is involved in. Students, on the other hand, invest $20 a year to learn. And there's so many features and benefits, things that Cyversity has to offer: job boards, competencies, trainings, education, mentoring, events, mentorship programs. And it really does go on, and happy to spend some time with any of you in our audience that wants to learn more about Cyversity. Happy to spend some more time with you individually after this discussion. Next slide, please. Again, here are some of the things that we have just spoke about: chapters, mentorships, scholarships. We've been giving out scholarships since 2014 to students and to individuals that have applied for scholarships and that are looking for opportunities. We've got a recent scholarship out. It's United Airlines scholarship for a GRC internship, mentorship, or an education program. You should give us a look at our website so you can see some of these opportunities and scholarships that are available. Next slide, please. More resources, events, as I mentioned, on-demand training and networking. Next slide. We speak about specific highlights throughout the year. You can see from February to December, there's a whole list of highlights that we go through. Whether it's Black History Month, Asian American, Pacific Islanders, Senior Citizens Month. This month it's LGBTQ and Pride Month. Of course, next month, Hispanic, September rather, not next month. Next month is my birthday. Next month it's Hispanic Latino Pride. November and December, you could see some of the other events that we highlight and go through. We're a very diverse organization, so we spend a lot of time talking about the diversity of not only our security community, but the general community at large. Next slide, please. Just ground rules, 45-minute, runs longer than that sometimes because there's a lot of questions and answers that come in. Session is being recorded and will be distributed upon a request, but also we've got an on-demand channel where you can go and find these recordings. Next slide. And of course, next month, we'll be talking to Dr. Yunesi Nunes. His speech talk is going to be on, of course, that's a blurred screen. His talk is going to be on how to develop effective sponsorship. Sometimes when you're in this industry, you never know who needs to sponsor you for that next opportunity. One of Cyversity's visions is to be relational from head to toe, so that when you apply for a position or an opportunity, if there's someone in that organization, or if we have, as Cyversity, have a relationship in that organization, we can help you navigate through that. So through that whole application process, because as you know, once the resumes go in, it's a pile, and so some get through and some don't. But we help in that process. So having a sponsor, good sponsor, and understanding the sponsorship process is pretty critical. So, Carol, I'm going to ask you to remove our slides so we can get back to this conversation. And ladies, I'm going to really jump in really quickly here. Thanks for patience with me while I went through that quick dialogue, if you will. And I wanted to give the audience just some historical background about DEI, period. Where it came from, who started it, why did it start, what was the need for it. Vanessa, I'm going to ask you to jump in there quick first and just give us, from your perspective, just some background, some historical background on DEI, where it came from and why is it necessary today?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. DE&I has been around a really long time. I don't want to bore people. I'm sure you've heard a lot about DE&I, the impact it's had on, people of color more specifically. But I'd like to kind of bring it more full circle in the current moment. So if you think about when George Floyd was murdered, and there were a lot of companies that started to look internally at what they were doing or weren't doing, and deciding they hadn't really done much, if anything. And I think that was when it was kind of a full circle moment. A lot of people, such as myself, who've worked in marketing and advertising, worked across a number of verticals within that industry, on the general market and multicultural side, I've seen over my tenure a lot. I have been discriminated against. I know people have been discriminated against. I've worked with clients who didn't understand culture and understand the importance of diversity in their messaging. And so I've seen quite a bit, but George Floyd's murder, I think, opened a lot of people's eyes. A lot of companies wanted to do more. They wanted to be better. I said in that moment, though, and I think I'm frozen again on the screen, but I said in that moment that people's natural behavior is to go back to those comfortable places. And I kind of premised, if you will, that we were going to kind of go backwards a little bit. I think there were a lot of people who didn't really embrace culture and diversity and the importance of it, who were put in roles who, weren't passionate about it. And I think people need to be passionate about this kind of work. And so, unfortunately, we've had a lot happen since then, with affirmative action being rolled back and, the effects of that. So I think, long story short, diversity has a long history. It is really important. It's gotten some DE&I as unfortunately had some setbacks, but I think it's still really important work that needs to be done moving forward. And we all need to, myself and I think everyone here can agree, we all want to continue to push that message forward and fight for equity and justice.
Good. Holly, you have reported on this, I don't know, 20 years you've been reporting on this, at least 10 years with Insights of Diversity, but even longer than that, you've been involved in this whole idea around diversity and inclusion and equity. Can you share with the audience your historical perspective as well on D&I, where it came from?
Sure. So my perspective is really more from the higher education background. Insight into diversity, which for anybody on this conversation was in higher ed for a long time, might remember it when it was called the Affirmative Action Register. It was actually started in the 70s. It's our 50th anniversary. And it was started around the affirmative action and EEO laws. Higher ed, specifically public institutions, are essentially subcontractors of the government because of money that they receive for funding. So they were required to account for their affirmative action and EEO plans and hiring and things like that. By the time we bought the magazine 17 years ago, it had really evolved from affirmative action and EEO to DEI, with a lot of the focus being on the diversity part. And over the last 17 years, we've seen it evolve to be more about the inclusion and the equity part. And I think those are some of the things that'll come up in our conversation a little later as we talk about the anti-DEI legislation and what's going on now and where the focus needs to be in order to keep being able to do the work that we're doing. But that's really a lot of the history of higher ed.
Great. Thanks very much. You know, Tia, you're a executive, a security executive, and an LGBTQ self-pronounced person, right? And so and a corporate athlete too. I was just checking out your profile. It was really great to read. I was really impressed by all of it. And when I got a chance to meet you in San Francisco, it was even better. So you know, we spoke about this whole idea about diversity and your particular perspective, if you will, on diversity, on DEI, and being being an LGBTQ individual in DEI, having to deal with the effects of DEI. Can you give us some? Is it relevant to you? Does it matter to you? Does it work for you?
Oh, that's a lot of questions. Relevant to me, matter to me, work for me. Yes, it is relevant to me. I am, I would say earlier in my career, being a young-ish Black woman, lesbian, and neurodiverse. I mean, it all applies to me. And there's a number of reasons that I may or may not have been selected for roles when I was coming up in my career. Honestly, a lot of times it felt like I would submit a job application, submit my resume, get selected to interview. And then when I'd walk into the room, the decision was already made that they were not going to move forward with me, which is interesting. So, you know, you think about microaggressions or the lack of representation, or the lack of a feeling of belonging, especially early on in my career when I was trying to establish my credibility, find my way. It is a very big deal. I mean, today I kind of, you know, grown up, and I'm like, you know, if the room feels like it's not for me, I'm just not going to be in that room. But not everyone has, you know, the ability to do that. So it is important that organizations have awareness of where they might be falling short, of where, you know, an employee might have special needs in order to perform their job, you know, at a level that's acceptable or comfortable to them, or where biases exist. I mean, we all have biases, right? Myself included. So I participate in the DEI committee at my company at eSentire. And when we're going through talking about all the things, like I said, my list is kind of long. So I'm like, I'm the diversity, equity, and inclusion champion, all the things. But I was heavily focused on things that were, to your point, relevant to me. I didn't think about ableism. I didn't think about ageism. So I think another important aspect of DEI is education and awareness, you know, in addition to ensuring those from underserved communities have a fair shake like everyone else.
Gotcha. You know, as Tia went through a whole list of, a good list of the things that are relevant to her, Sophia, it was pretty clear that a practitioner like yourself has a lot to do and a lot on their plate, right? To manage and to adjust and to look at all of these specificities around diversity of every type and kind in the organization. As a practitioner, I mean, you're tasked with handling these on a day-to-day basis. So it's right there in front of you. you're diverse, for crying out loud. So of course, these things matter and are relevant to you as well. What's your give us a day in the life, a brief day in the life of a person that has to implement these types of programs and live with it and work within an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, there are a list of, no day is the same when you are in this space. We're dealing with, human beings, and human beings are very layered, and nuanced. And so every situation that arises, you bring to that situation something very specific. So I think what would be super helpful maybe is if I went through what some of those challenges are and some of the things that, are helpful. So I would say one of the constant and key challenges is navigating that resistance to change. And this oftentimes it stems from lack of understanding, the fear of the unknown, and those perceived never-ending threats to existing power structures. So to address this, it's crucial to engage in continuous education and communication, highlighting the benefits of DEI for everyone involved. And a challenging part of that is the constant need to shift language and approach based on who you're engaging with. Constant moves to meet people where they are. And that's a skill that has to be developed and fine-tuned at all times. And it's not easy. This also takes a lot of mental bandwidth. So an additional part of this is for our fellow practitioners out there, how are you supporting yourself in the role to maintain your ability to do this work? There's a lot of talk right now about DEI practitioner burnout. And I will just say that's a very real issue that I deal with on a regular basis. Another challenge is measuring DEI initiatives. And I think an important part of that is it's important to gain consensus on how those things are being measured too. I think that also is one of the key challenges is practitioners have a sense of how they think things should be measured. That's how they're measuring. That's how they bring forward success. But those elements haven't been agreed upon by leadership or you haven't communicated them. So that's another thing. I would say healthy expectations for progress. I would say the foundational element of this work is rooted in the basic tenets of change management. And you can only do so much so quickly before you unintentionally start to see people disengage from your work. So also I think setting really healthy expectations for progress. And then I would say finally is another, and it's quite difficult, is how do you move people from all of the self-awareness work that's been happening over the years into a place where they're actually accountable for that work? And I think a really big piece of that and something that you have to do on a regular basis is the continuous development of people that are in key leadership positions so that you can start to embed inclusive behaviors into how the business is managing performance, as well as how they're leaning in on the key skills for employees that they need to be developed on. So another part of that is weaving it into the DNA of the organization. So all of that, those are the challenges that happen every day. Every situation is different, how you're communicating all of that. And I think for most practitioners too, you're doing this as a team of one. So you are cross-collaborating across multiple parts of the business at any given time, tracking and communicating each of these different pieces. And you're also accountable then for all of those different things that you are pushing out. So there are a lot of different things that you are maneuvering through any given day. So also a challenge is give yourself grace because you're one person.
That sounds so real. It sounds like a lot. Oh my God, I'm impressed with what you've been doing, and we see the work that you're doing over at Rapid 7. If I could take a step back and what I've heard from you and Tia, and education, just training and working and informing people about what this really means. From an education perspective, Holly, I wanted to spend some time with you and Vanessa specifically, just for a couple of minutes, to talk about this whole idea of political pullback, political and corporate pullback, where DEI is concerned. I mean, because it's reflected in Tia and Sophia, because Tia is in the middle of it, being affected by it. Sophia is grinding out the work that's coming out of this legislation that you report on, Holly, and the corporate culture that you're trying to steer, Vanessa. Can you guys just give us your perspective on the political ramifications or the political challenges that are going on? What's the purpose for the pullback? Why are states pulling back? Higher education pulling back? Corporations pulling back? What's the reason? What's going on? Holly, you first.
Okay, that's a huge question.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I wish I had an answer to the why. I can give you an answer to the what's going on. There's pushback, and I think probably everybody at this point has referred to it, fear of loss of power, fear of change, fear of the future, and wanting to hold on to the status quo and keep things the same. So you see states like Florida, Texas, North Carolina. There's actually a legislation tracker that you can find online of anti-DEI legislation, just as it affects higher education. I printed it out. It was 50 pages of proposed and approved legislation that's impacted colleges and universities all over the country. So the first thing I'll say is, if you think it's not coming to your state, then you're burying your head in the sand. Doesn't matter how blue your state is, doesn't matter how liberal you think your state is, it's coming. It's going to be coming across the board, because not only is it coming just for DEI, it's coming in other ways that you might not think about that are attacking higher ed, like tenure, under the guise of freedom of expression and free speech. There's so many different ways in which people are trying to take down DEI. And honestly, those initials DEI on some college campuses, they're a dirty word. They've got people hiding out sort of undercover to tape and record people who were former chief diversity officers whose offices have been dismantled on these campuses to see, are you still teaching this stuff? Is it still happening? And then exposing it on the news. It's really insidious. I may have strayed from your original question. I wish I could say it was going to get better, but I think a lot of it is going to depend on what happens in November with the election and what happens in local elections. So if I can walk away from this experience to talk with just one message, so I don't forget to say it at the end, please vote, please vote, please vote. And if you have employees who report to you, please give them the day off, or make sure you don't schedule any meetings that day or require them to be in person so that they can go vote, because this isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Got it. Thank you. Vanessa, you spend time steering some of these conversations and ideas and processes at corporate levels, helping them to shape their DEI and ESG program. What's missing here? What are we missing, and why are we seeing so much pullback, not only in corporate America, but in higher education, which actually just converts over? It just slips over from higher education to corporate America. Please.
Yeah, so I want to just go back just a second. Holly said something I think is central to what everyone is going through right now, which is fear. Fear is driving a lot of what's happening. You look at fear from George Floyd's murder. Oh my God, it created fears in corporation. You think about affirmative action, when the Supreme Court ruled it in, when they ruled it out, fear, right? You think about corporations, right? Profits, shareholders, they have responsibilities, and the fear is all these other agendas, or are at play here. And there's this fear factor. If you think about higher education, right? Now affirmative action is being erased, right? From those institutions. There's this outcry about reverse discrimination. I don't subscribe to that. Discrimination is discrimination is discrimination. And it's not something that I think people should look at as the end all be all, is that
white people are being discriminated against because affirmative action is doing XYZ, is reserving roles for students in higher education who actually deserve to be there and don't normally get accepted. So I say all that to say if you think about it, with me working with corporations, partnering with them, it's not about just the bad. It's also about the good. It's about coming in, identifying the gaps. What are you doing well? What are you possibly not doing? What are those gaps, and how do we create and work together and create strategies that help change, DE&I? And I think Sophia may have said it earlier, it's becoming this kind of dirty word, and how you may have referenced it as well. It's become this dirty word, but it's still something that's really important. So corporations, I think there are some that are still very much in line with wanting to change that culture internally. And so partnering with them and doing different types of training. So a great example, I recently did 2 trainings for Impact and Inclusion Month for Eurus, which is a division of Compass Group, which is the largest hospitality company in the country. And one of the sessions was specifically around unconscious bias in your energy, and how are you bringing bias, bringing this negative energy, bringing discrimination into the workplace, and how do you change that? Right? So working with them to help educate their employees around their role in this dynamic of discrimination, of diversity. And I think it's some companies attempt to try to shift the narrative around, okay, affirmative action has been struck down. What do we continue to do to keep that conversation going and continue to do good work? So working with them to do that, but also part of what I do and in my experience in marketing and advertising is, how do we bring that halo effect of what you're doing internally within that organization into the marketplace? Because we know at the end of the day, without consumers, right, purchasing your products or services, you wouldn't exist. And so how do we, in this hypersensitive environment, make sure that consumers understand that you care about all people, not just white people, not just Black people, all people? And so that's what I focus on in working with corporations, also coaching as well.
Thank you. Tia, I recall you saying in our last conversation, and I'd rather you repeat it rather than me repeating it. What's a good DEI strategy? You had a phrase that you used, and I'm going to let you say it, but can you expand on that whole comment about what a good DEI strategy is and what it looks like?
Yeah, and look, I'm not the practitioner here, so this just might be lofty, but my perspective is the best DEI strategy is the one that you don't need, right? When you're actually doing skills-based hiring or skills-based recruiting, and in general, making room for diverse talent that may not check the types of boxes that you're used to, but have skills and talents that are adjacent to the ones that you need. Look, I know in cybersecurity, the stakes are high and it's hard. We have challenges even figuring out the best way to get entry-level talent into industry. So, for me, that's another version of diverse, because it's something that hiring managers aren't used to. And a lot of hiring managers, because the stakes are so high, want to go with what they're used to, want to go with what they know works. That's business in general. If I'm a CEO and I've got to grow a business or take a business public, I'm going to go find my crew. I'm going to go find the people that I've done it with before, or people that resemble people that I've done it with before. And we just have to shake that mentality in general and just shatter this whole, I don't know what we call it, but yeah, I feel like the day that we're no longer having this conversation is the day that we've done what we need to do. But for the cybersecurity industry specifically, the adversaries, they don't care. They're diverse. If you've got the skill, I don't care what you look like. I don't care how old you are. I don't care where you're from. I just need you to do the thing. So go do the thing for me. And I know we can't be that loose, right? Because we have laws and things like that we have to follow, but we have to care about diversity of thought, which is what's at the core of all of this. Diverse backgrounds, regardless if it's race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever it is, brings diversity of thought. I come from very humble beginnings, and I see the difference in myself when I'm having budget conversations and I'm able to do a lot with a little. versus some of my peers that maybe didn't have the struggle of choosing between a gallon of gas and a gallon of milk and not being able to figure out, how to get a lot done with a little. So anyway, getting hopped up on a soapbox here. But the point being, we've done the work when we no longer need to do the work.
Great, and we do appreciate that soapbox that you get on. I know I do. It's always great to hear you talk about this. Sophia, earlier you were talking about measuring success and measuring the metrics around what a good DEI program looks like. And I think you even spoke about it briefly, but can you be more specific about what Tia was specific about what it is to her, but can you be even more specific about what a great DEI program is the impact it's going to have and the outcome?
Yeah. So I would say the impact, I feel like that really leads into what Tia just shared, which is the impact of a great program and a strategy is that at some point you get to a point where it's so embedded and baked into how you operate as a company. There is no separate check the box kind of way that it's operating. I think there will always be a need for someone to be looking out to make sure that things are remaining, but truly, you should be you should be working yourself out of a job. So I think that's the impact. But I think it's looking at it from an ecosystem of how everything works together. And when you talked a little bit about, that piece of measurement that I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people want some very easy kind of dashboard to look at to say X, Y, and Z impacted, and this is the metric. But I think you really need to lean into some critical thinking skills when you look at overarching measurement and impact. So you need to be looking at engagement data and breaking that down by all the different groups that are representative within your organization, looking at hiring trends, retention, attrition, feedback, all of those different pieces to make sure that the things that you're actually building are having the impact on everyone, so helping them move their skills of inclusion forward, but also are you creating an ecosystem where individuals with multidimensional backgrounds are actually there and thriving? And I would say the outcome, one of the biggest outcomes is I keep hearing a lot of companies, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. If DEI is the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. Yes, agreed. But it is also the strategic thing to do. If you are a part of a company that is looking to expand globally, having skills and also having multidimensional perspectives in your organization that are actually being valued and woven into how you are problem solving is what's going to actually make you successful long term. So if you have a whole bunch of leaders that are looking to expand and they continuously are looking at things from a very monocultural kind of mindset, a real strategic thing is to actually start to equip your leaders with the skills to be able to navigate lots of different nuanced, different spaces with cultural agility so that they can lead in a lot of different contexts and start to look at things from a very multidimensional kind of perspective. So to me, that's what the measurement piece, and that's also to me what actual success looks like in this space. And if you're doing it well, it really does have an impact then on that bottom line of success and breaking into different markets and managing people.
David, can I add something additionally because I think we had a really good conversation around what you just said, Sophie. Companies really need to go outside of the box of thinking that employee resource groups are the end all be all of change within an organization. Because if you look at myself and a lot of people who join us today, I am multidimensional. Right? I'm multifaceted. I am a woman. I am a Black woman. I am a lesbian woman. I'm a professional. I'm a mother. There's so many dimensions to people. And I think companies start to think about employee resource groups, they can just go there and they'll solve all of our problems for a company. That's not the answer. I think it's a lot of the strategies and thinking within that company that Sophia was mentioning that are really critical to that change. And change has to come with accountability. And I think there are a lot of companies that are still not holding their leadership accountable for that necessary change that needs to happen. And if you're talking about sustainability down the road, those are the things that will be the change that those are the things that need to happen to create the change, the sustainable change within organizations. So, and the other part I want to just caveat is a lot of companies now with the shift of affirmative action and DE&I shifting are rolling it up under HR. And they are very distinctly different roles within a company. That is not to say that they are not partners, that they work hand in hand to bring in that talent. It's one thing to bring in talent. It's another thing about the experience when they get there. And so that's where the person who leads the diversity efforts really kind of picks up the baton, right? And works with HR to make sure that every employee that's brought in has a great experience. And then that leadership, what's that experience like with the leadership, and are they prepared to meet the needs of that diverse workforce? So it's a really big ecosystem, but I think those are some of the things that companies that I work with, and I'm sure a lot of people here work with, that we want them to understand. Diversity is never going to be something that you can quietly sweep under the rug. It's always going to be there. And it's incumbent upon you to make that change as leader.
I was going to come to you next, Vanessa, anyway, because you work with CEOs, for crying out loud. I mean, there's where the responsibility begins, and there's where the responsibility, for me, it starts and ends there. As an entrepreneur myself and the CEO myself, it starts there and ends there, because that's where it ends there in terms of responsibility, because they have to cascade that message down. What are you doing how are you helping CEOs see the forest and or the trees? How do you help them see that?
Well, it differs for everyone. Some people are much more advanced in the way that they operate. As a professional executive coach and transformational life coach, that's what I work on a lot with CEOs, not just the strategies and those tangible things that you can do internally within an organization, but personally. Where are you? Where's your unconscious bias? How is your energy showing up? How is it creating unconscious bias within organizations? So I work a lot with them around their personal energy, and then how do they bring that energy into the workplace? But then when they get into the workplace, who are the key people that they need to work with to make sure that they are implementing strategies that are relevant, that are not antiquated, that are meeting this Gen Z and this Gen Alpha. I was at a retreat last week and we talked a lot about Gen Alpha. Like, this is a whole new world in front of us. And so we need to make sure that we're meeting them with the energy and the strategies that are relevant for today, and making sure that, they're showing up. And so it's not just about, how do I change? It's not just about the numbers. So anyone can say 10% of my workforce is diverse. It's about, okay, 10% is diverse. I want to increase it based on population. And I want to make sure that when they get here, again, like I just mentioned and Sophia was talking about, like, what's that experience like and how do we make that sustainable? And so working with them around those strategies and how they show up is really important to the work that I do with them.
There was something that we had spoke about earlier, and it was we were discussing what we call strategic workforce hiring. I mean, hiring folks that have a diverse, intuitively they're diverse, rather than having this whole sort of one track mind, if you will. What's the focus around? Why is it important to hire people that think diverse and are diverse and want to lean into diversity rather than folks that are just fishing from the same pool? How does that help an organization sort of expand their diversity and inclusion and diversity, equity, and inclusion as a concept and as a process? Anyone can answer that.
I think it's important. I'll start. I think it's extremely important because if you just think about a certain industry, bias is like hires like, right? So if someone is and it's easier, right? We talk about decision fatigue, for example. A person doesn't want to have to think about that again. So they tend to hire people who look like them, who act like them. But I think there's this notion of, we want to just recruit from colleges and universities. Well, I mean, Sophia, I'm sure you can talk about this. It's like companies are now starting to remove that you have to have a college degree to work within this company, because typically people of color, if they read a job description and there's certain language that's used, they won't apply. So it doesn't matter if you are looking for this great talent within a certain environment. They may not apply for those roles because they don't see themselves in the language that you're asking for from an employee in that role. But also, I think there's this notion that, I want to hire I want to increase my diverse numbers. So I'm going to go and partner with HBCUs. While I think that is phenomenal and I'm all for it, I think there is a huge need for that. If you look at the numbers, there are more people who don't go to HBCUs that go to local colleges, two-year colleges, that are ripe for roles that are open currently today. So I think it's about creating those strategies to get in the community, look at different, fishing ponds, if you will, and making sure that we're not setting ourselves up to just continue to hire people that look like us, act like us, go to the same schools we went to.
Right. Holly, your thoughts on what higher education should be doing around diversity that transfers over to corporations or to the corporate environment. I mean, this is where the education around being a corporate person begins at college, right? It becomes more real when you're there in college and you begin to learn what it takes to be a professional. What should colleges be doing, and what should universities be doing around this whole DEI thing? Should they be just leaning into it or accepting it? Should they be fighting back against those rules and laws that are sort of coming down and they're coming into fruition in their states? What should they be doing?
So first, I would just like to say I totally agree with what Vanessa just said. Absolutely. And I think remembering that I think HBCUs are amazing also, but recognizing that there are schools that are doing a ton with DEI work, looking at who they're employing. So one of the things we offer at Insight is our Higher Education Excellence and Diversity Award. It's an application that any school can apply for, and there's no cost. It's a very lengthy, very monster-y kind of application because we ask about everything and anything related to DEI across the campus. And it really does relate to both employees and to students. But how are you going to attract students who are from diverse backgrounds if they get there and there's nobody who looks like them? So colleges need to think first about the people that they're employing. So I just want to echo what Vanessa was saying. And about what the campus is like once they get there, because you can hire lots and lots of people, but if people are running out the door screaming because it's a horrible place to be, nobody's going to stick around, and that really defeats your purpose. So I think we've also talked about how it comes from the top. Look, there's a big challenges for colleges and universities right now. Some of them can't have DEI programs. They can no longer ask about DEI statements in hiring. They can't do training. But I think they need to remember a few things. It's about access, it's about opportunity, and it's about success. And there's still ways of focusing on those critically important things from people from all underrepresented groups, whether you're looking at religious diversity, veteran status, people with disabilities, religious diversity, political diversity, whatever it is that you're looking across the broadest possible spectrum of diversity, and remembering that the people you're hiring and the people that you are bringing in as students, you have to create a safe environment for them. And you have to ensure that they're successful, because they are going to go on into the world and bring with them what they've learned at your institution and what they've gotten from the people who are teaching them or are mentoring them or are overseeing them. So even if your programs have been cut, you still need to have a campus where people are going to feel safe and where they're going to feel like they're going to be successful. The other thing I'd like to add, one of the things that I love about the HEAT Award, and of course I am 100% biased because it's ours, is the schools that win it are not necessarily the schools you think of. It's not necessarily a place where they have the most diverse student population. It's about what they're doing to support the people that they hire and the students that they have at that institution to ensure that they're successful. So one of the things that I'd love, I know somebody mentioned kind of going back to the same wells for the hiring and decision fatigue. So going back to your alma mater or hiring from the same schools where you've always recruited, things like that. There's a lot of schools out there that are preparing young people to be amazing graduates with a great worldview, who are going to bring you the diversity of thought and diversity of talent and diversity of life experience that you're looking for at institutions that you just might not have thought of because they don't necessarily come to mind. So one of the things I'd love to encourage is think outside the box, because if you keep going back to the same well, you're going to get the same water. If you think differently, there's so many other wells out there that are untapped that offer so much. And Vanessa also mentioned community colleges, local institutions. If you all keep fighting over the same people at the same, 5 top ranked institutions for engineering or accounting or whatever it is, you're going to be fighting over a very small pool of people, and they might be great, but there's so many other great people out there that are amazing untapped potential for you.
And they'll be too expensive.
That is true. And with remote work, you don't have to look in your own backyard anymore.
That's correct. So, I wanted to talk about the next 5 to 10 years. We've got probably about 10 minutes left or less. And I wanted to invite anyone in the audience if you have a question for Sophia, for Tia, for Holly, or for Vanessa, please put the question in the chat. Let them answer the question. And in the meantime, I wanted to just go around the room and ask the question about the next 5 or 10 years in DEI. Holly, this legislation and these types of attacks, I'll call them, as you said, they're not going to stop, and they're going to persist. What should we be doing? I know voting is one thing, voting locally and voting nationally. Are there other strategies that we should be employing? Are there other things that we should be looking at? What should we be doing with our children? What should we be doing with our PTA, our Boy Scouts, blah, blah, all of those things? What should we be doing as it bubbles up to higher education and then into corporate America? What do you think we should be doing?
There's a couple of things. The first is, I think we need to remind, and I'm sure this is something that everybody on this call encounters, that research shows that diversity of thought, diversity of employees, et cetera, it actually leads to a greater ROI. So not just in higher ed, but as you continue to diversify your workforce, if you're a company and you're accountable to your stockholders, you're going to make more money. And there's research and proof of that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I think this is something that Tia talked about earlier, is having people envision themselves in careers that they might not have thought about. One of the things that we encourage schools to do, we ask about in our HEAT award, and we actually have some other award recognitions for it, like in STEM and business, is what are you doing to encourage people from underrepresented groups to enter this particular area of a profession that you might not have thought about? And they will tell us about school programs that they have with K through 12 kids, dental schools, kids who might not have even realized, someone who looks like me can be a veterinarian, can be a dentist, can be an accountant. I didn't know that this was a career opportunity out there. So when it comes to PTAs or boys and girls clubs or after school clubs or whatever it is out there, just reaching out to the community to show younger people there's a career path for you that you may not even realize was available. And here's where we can light the embers of your interest and then show you how to continue on that path along the way, so that when you get to college, you have an interest, you have something you want to pursue, and you get there and you see people who look like you. It's partnering with nonprofit organizations that focus on these areas as well. And then nurturing that love and spirit and support through mentorship, through collaboration, through the DEI offices, or through the local community. Here's just a really great example. At some of the schools in Texas, for example, one of the things that was cut when the DEI offices were cut, was individual graduations. So there were lavender graduations for LGBTQ students, and there were other graduations for people from different underrepresented backgrounds, and all of that was gone. The kids were left floundering. They didn't have the offices to rely on. They didn't have the staff to rely on. They had each other to rely on, but no funding. They reached out to the community, and the community came up with money, and the community supported them because they understood that these were kids who worked to earn this, and they wanted to make sure they got what they deserved and the recognition they deserved and a celebration of their success as they went off into the world. So legislation, there's still people out there who are going to have their back and tap into them.
I love that, Holly. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. Love it.
Oh, great. Vanessa, you next, please.
I really want to piggyback on some of the things that Holly said. Thanks for having me go after her. One of the things that I do in my training with people, and we think about affirmative action, we've talked about that quite a bit, DE&I love that, people are starting to think about, what do I do next? And I tell them, it's your life. It's your life. It's your career. And I think there's this constant co-creation process. And when you think about, people are putting a lot of pressure on companies to solve everything for them. Some, not all, but there are some. Why don't you do this? Why can't you do this? Why don't you have funding? Why don't you? It's always the why. And so I talk a lot about it's your life, it's your career, take control of it. What are you doing to change the narrative within your company and in your personal life around diversity? So I tell people, stop always putting it on the CEO of your company to do everything. A lot has to do with you and your personal commitment too. So I talk about, if you want to be part of the conversation in your company about shifting the diversity, know what your company is doing around diversity. Be involved. What's your current contribution internally as an employee to those efforts? What are your short-term and long-term goals within that company? Sharing them with your leadership. Because your leaders, if they understand this is what you want to do, there are some, that will help you. They will sponsor you. And so stop putting all of this just on the leadership to create the change. Get into the community. What is your company doing in the community? Do they have a program that goes out to those colleges and universities locally? If they don't, start one. I'm sure there are other like-minded people within your organization that would love to be involved with that. That's why I was so excited to hear that they went to the community for their prom or graduation and the community supported them. That's what needs to happen. And so the more that people understand this is a co-creation process throughout your life, not just one job, it's throughout your life. What are you doing to contribute to your education? Are you setting aside a little percent? I don't know what everybody's pockets look like, what their income is, but if there's a way to set aside a small percent of those dollars to educate you, not just giving it away, not just buying things, it's to focus on your growth and development. And building relationships is a huge part of that journey. So I think culture, diversity, inclusion, belonging continues to have it's evolving. It's an evolution, and I don't think it's going to change. I just know that it's in my lifetime, I'm going to do whatever I can to help continue that change. But I think it is something that is nowhere near being over.
Got it. Thanks very much. I'm going to go to Sophia and Tia last, but I wanted to ask a question that's in the chat. It's from Cynthia. What strategies did you use? Did you ensure career pathways are accessible and effective, and what impact did they have? I'm not sure I read that correctly, but the question nonetheless was about strategies used to ensure career pathways and accessibility. Who would like to take that question? Well, don't all jump in it at the same time. It's just,
I can
don't all crowd into the door at the same time.
Well, I can give one, example of what we're doing at Rapid 7, which is we partner with an organization that's called Hack Diversity. And similar to Cyversity, they're very focused on upskilling and educating individuals from different career backgrounds that would like to make the move into cybersecurity. And then we partner with them directly as a part of their programs, and then bring them in as interns, and then hopefully in the future hire them. But I'd say that's like one tangible way you can partner with organizations that are actually working to upskill and educate, and then partner with them to bring them into your organization. And on the other side of that, one thing that Hack Diversity does is they work with you as an organization to look at the different key areas of your ecosystem to make sure that you are not being stagnant in the way that you're also progressing your programming. And I think that's one thing that I wanted to lean in on what Vanessa said earlier, which is, I think something that will continue to happen in this space, you'll see less resistance from DEI practitioners and other people in this space with adapting strategies for DEI. DEI is a necessary and strategic function of the business. And like every other strategic area of a business, every year you adapt your strategy, your terminology, and your approach. So DEI is going to be no different moving forward, I think, in that aspect. And then leaning on what Vanessa said, it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. So we just need to continue to evolve and shift.
Great.
I want to piggyback on what Sophia said, if that's okay, to address Cynthia's question. If you don't have a mentor, find a mentor, someone who can help you along the journey, help you create your goals. And you have to have a roadmap. If you don't have your goals written down, career goals, personal goals, it's so critically important that you do that. And then you come back and you refine it and you review it, and it will grow and it will evolve and adapt as you evolve through your career, as you evolve through life. But that is so important to understand what's important to you, what you're passionate about, and have the roadmap to help you get there. But a mentor is a great way to have someone who can help you. I even as long-standing, I have been in my career a long time, I have a mentor who will check me, who will call me on my stuff. And I don't know, it's a whole lot of, and I don't have a lot of stuff, but that's someone who I trust. It's a safe space. So I encourage people to also find someone to mentor them and have the roadmap to success for themselves.
That's a great response. That's a great response, Vanessa. Lauren in our chat asked the question, what's the best way to encourage DEI in the workplace? I'm going to come to you next to you. So maybe you can talk about what's the best way to encourage DEI in the workplace.
I'm not going to have a great answer for this. I'm just going to start out by saying that I am a bit of a bull in a china shop wearing ballerina slippers. So I'm not that person that's going to jump up and down and say, we need to do DEI, we need to do DEI, but I am the person that's going to represent it. So I do take my full authentic self to work. I am a representative of those that relate to me. And instead of telling my company, we need to hire more women, we need to hire more people of color, we need to do more of this, we need to do more of that, I take it upon myself to be the change that I want to see. And I think that connects back to some of the things that Vanessa and Sophia and Holly have all touched on, just taking initiative ourselves and going out and doing things. I mean, it does come down to understanding where your company is on the issue, because you can't be a bull in that china shop if the china is just not up for knocking over, because you do have bills to pay if that's where you decide you want to stay, right? I do believe there's an art to being a disruptor without being disruptive. So playing that delicately is important. But the one thing I want to add to this is, the future of diversity, like, it can't go anywhere. Because our future is essentially comes down to an arms race, which traditionally is a competition between nations for superiority in the development and accumulation of weapons. But if we think about the fact that the wars of the future are going to be fought behind a keyboard, then the people are the weapons. And so that arms race becomes critical. And for me, the ARMS stands for awareness, representation, mentorship, and support. And if we don't have those things, then, and diversity, promotes DEI, rather, programs promote all these things. If we don't have that, then we don't stand a chance when it comes to something as important as our national security, right? This is about more than the bottom line of our businesses. So, like I said, I'm not going to have a great practitioner answer to that question, but I firmly believe in being the change that I want to see.
Well, your answer caught me in such a way that I didn't even have my mute button off. I was just listening to you so intently. That was a great answer. I think that answer was incredibly great because it was incredibly poignant, and it meant the moment, and it meant the minute. So thank you very much for that. There's one last question, but after this question, 20 seconds from each of you of a parting statement to our audience, if that'll be okay. This question is from Dio. By the way, Dio is in Uganda. So you know what time it is over there? Right. Dio is when he often comes to our conversation. His question is, how does culture benefit an organization? And how does a good company's culture look? And it's over my mouse is over that. And how do you set it up? I'm going to ask you, Vanessa, to take that. And then Sophia, please lean in if you will.
I think a great question. Thanks for asking it. I think it starts with talking to your leadership. Nothing will ever change without having the buy-in from your leadership. So you first get that buy-in. Come prepared with something to talk about, like, hey, this is the research that I've seen. These companies are winning. They have whatever it is come with a case study, if you will. So get that buy-in, come with a case study, come with the high level strategic approach that how you can do it within your organization. And then that's where you start. I think the outgrowth of that, the inclusion culture is a outgrowth of inclusion within an organization. So first you have to create something, like have everyone who are empowered and accountable to agree. What does that look like? And then start the work. And it's going to take time. I think we talked about this before. And, a lot of times D&I programs don't last because companies want to see change in 5 minutes. And it takes much longer than that. If you think about creating a habit, 90 days. You have to give it long time. And this is one person talking about a company. So you have to put things in place to start, and then nurture and grow it over time, and have a good case study of what great looks like. P&G has a great case study out there about their leadership program and how that really impacts everything within their company. So that would be how I would start. And then partner with you if you have a chief diversity officer. Partner with them.
All right. Thanks very much, Vanessa. Hey, Vanessa, thank you for being here. Appreciate you very much. Sophia, you can lean in there a little bit yourself, and in 20 seconds of your parting statement, please.
Yeah, I think Vanessa touched on most of the things, but I would just say I think that a good culture is one that visibly has the imprints of everyone that is represented within your company, and it actively is a place where people feel safe enough to raise concerns in an open space, and have leaders that are willing to engage in those conversations. They're just are willing to engage and then enact upon whatever feedback is given. So I'd say that would be my 2 cents. And then, in closing, I would just say, we touched on this earlier, not all the onus is solely on the leaders in your organization. You have to be an active part of helping create the space that you want to be a part of. So if you have a DEI leader, if you have senior leaders that are engaged and are actively participating, you also need to be an active participant as well.
Powerful statement. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for being here too, Sophia. Appreciate you very much. Holly, it's been a while since we talked, but I'm so happy to see you, and I'm so happy for you to be here and have this discussion with us. Any parting statements that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. It's been a great discussion. It's been wonderful to meet all of you other women on this call, and I look forward to continuing to stay in touch afterwards and learning more about you and your organizations, because we have a national platform to talk about them. That being said, I think I just want to reiterate something I said before, which is the ripple effects of the DEI, the anti-DEI legislation, go way past higher education. They go
Is that me or is that us?
No, that's
I think
Holly.
she
She
froze.
froze.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad it's not me this time.
Me too.
In the meantime, Tia, you know, all of this to me is about you. It's about it's about you because you're one of the board members for Cyversity, and this is part of, you know, part of what you're doing and what you sort of signed up to do, and to create access and create opportunity and create mentorship, education, and to create this community of diverse cybersecurity practitioners that, in a real sense, save our environment, save our world, and save our nation, and save other nations too. So, you know, I'm really thankful that you agreed to come and to speak here today. I really learned a lot from you, all of you, really. And then also, I just wanted to give you 20 seconds or some time just to close us out today. And again, I appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me. This is a great discussion. I think I'm going to part with something that is actually not mine, but it impacted me when I heard it. And I can't remember if it was on our pre-call or not, but we were talking about the difference between allies and advocates. And I've been supportive of allyship. But when I heard that comment, I took a step back and I said, being an ally is kind of passive. It's like, yeah, I'm good with the thing. I understand the thing, and I support you. I'm a cheerleader over here on the sideline, but an advocate is going to get in the game with you. So if we're going to make change, we have to do work. So if there are people in your lives saying that they understand, saying that they're an ally, educate them on the difference between being an ally and being an advocate, and challenge them. Tell them to be more of an advocate. And then we start to kind of have a bigger force moving behind us to make this change we're after.
Incredible. Thanks very much. I want you guys just to spend a couple seconds looking over at the side there, you in the audience, at the side panel there. There are 4 links for Sophia, for Tia, for Vanessa, and for Holly. These are the links to their LinkedIn. Feel free to copy those links down and to connect with these sisters, because as you can see and hear, they are instrumental in their individual lives in DE&I. They're instrumental in their individual lives in consulting and supporting and helping us go through this process, learn about this process, engage in this process, not be fearful of this process, right? And so they're very instrumental in their own individual lives and as advocates and allies, but real allies. But real allies. Holly, I'm gonna give you back your 20 seconds. Please come through.
I'm so sorry, my internet crashed. I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody. And just to remember that I agree with everyone here. This is the future. It's not going away. No matter what the legislature would like to do, this is still a part of everybody's life. So continue to fight for what you think are the right things to do. Continue to vote to make your voice be heard. And continue to remember that even if you live in the most liberal areas of the country, your DEI potential or initiatives or funding may be controlled by what's around your local zip code. And so it may be, that's actually a quote from a diversity officer at a college in a New York school who said, doesn't matter what New York is, this is where I live, this is what I deal with. So remember what's out in your local community, be a part of that community, make things happen. I don't necessarily look like what you think will be the face of DEI, but I'm here to fight for it in every possible way, shape, and form. And if I can help in any way, reach out, please.
Thank you. Holly, so great to have you here. So great.
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. All of you.
It's so perfect, ladies. So perfect. I'm in such great company. Audience, thank you very much for being here. Connect with these sisters, because it's imperative that we learn from them and we grow this whole process around DEI. In the meantime, I know you're in the background there, Caroline. You can take and close this session out. I appreciate everything you do back there. And ladies, again, as always, parting, peace, love, and soul.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.